sometimes we forget to put ourselves back on mute, so we get a little background noise. So he's going to watch for that. He'll watch for anything in the chat box as well and let me know. And let's see. So I was welcoming those of you who were brand new to the class or brand new to my classes, and I'm just really pleased that you came to check my class out. And is there anyone who's brand new to Get Set Up? Okay, so you're all old hands at this. Well, not old, you know what I mean. You've been here, so let's get started. We won't stand on any ceremony. Let me just take a quick look here. I see something in the chat. Couldn't get on with the email. Okay. So Natalie, you're okay now, but I'm going to call that to Joe's attention so he can check that out and have chat with you if need be to help you with any technical issues in the future with that. Okay, thank you. All right, so about to share my screen so we can go ahead and get started. And now. Now, what happened to you? There you are. Sometimes windows pop up and you disappear and I have to find you again. There you are. And you should see my slide that says healthy desserts. Good. We're getting off on the right foot then. My name is Deb Livingston, and I am your guide for today's session. For those of you who haven't met me before, I am from York, Pennsylvania, where it is kind of getting to be a nice sunny day. I'm so looking forward to spring. My background is in training and organizational development. So I've been a trainer all my life in some capacity, or a coach. And now I just enjoy doing this about topics that I like with people who actually want to be in my classes. So thanks again for being here. And it's a lot of fun to talk about cooking with people who also enjoy it. We do learn from each other. So I'm here as your guide. I bring information to the table. I'm a research junkie, so I do tend to bring as much information as I can. Sometimes I overdo it. So if I'm going too far, too fast, slow me down, stop me, ask questions. I'm fine with that. Unmute yourself at any time. Ideally, we learn from each other, though. You all bring something to the table, too. So it's important that you chime in, too. That's what this group is all about. You can go to plenty of online learning places and kind of sit in the crowd and listen to what they have to say. But I think the real value here is that we get to interact together and learn from each other and get to meet people from all over the world. So if you can have your camera on, that's wonderful. That really gives us all a lot more energy, I think. And same thing with the microphone. You can request a recording of this class after the class through help@getsetup.io. And we are on live stream today. So if you've been checking that out on the site, you can kind of have that playing in the background if you're not able to attend the class. And I want to just say hello to those who might be joining us by live stream and encourage you to come and sign up for a class because it's a lot of fun when we can be all talking together. Last but not least, I just want to let you know that though I do in these classes sometimes introduce you, or a lot of times introduce you to websites and some products and things, there's no financial relationship. This is just information that I think would be worthwhile sharing with you. So today we have a healthy agenda. We're going to start by talking about what makes a dessert unhealthy. And I really would like your input about that. So you can start.
I have to butt in because I have supposedly been hacked. So I'm going to have to get off.
Oh, I am so sorry. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Bye.
Bye-bye. That's too bad. Wonder what happened there. Okay. Joe, maybe that is something that we could follow up on or report on or something. I'm not sure whether that came out, where that message came for her. Okay, so our agenda, what makes a dessert unhealthy, and finding out what you think about that. Yes, Natalie.
I'd say sugar and the type of flour and like the butter or the margarine or whatever you're using, those three things.
Okay, that's pretty good. So sugar, flour, fat. Yep, those three things. Well, you hit my agenda pretty well there. So we'll come back to that in a minute. And then we're going to go over a dietary guideline overview a bit that the government puts out, just so you have an idea of where a healthy dessert might fit into your daily caloric intake and your intake of the three macronutrients, which are carbohydrates, fats, and proteins. We don't think too much about proteins in dessert, although we can make a dessert healthier by adding some protein. We typically think about carbohydrates and fats when we think about the bad things in desserts. So then we'll talk about how do we make these desserts healthier, either by decreasing the amount of the bad stuff and or by increasing some healthy ingredients in these desserts. So you can actually get to the end and have a dessert and not feel guilty about it, which would be wonderful. And then we will do a recipe review. I have a few things to share with you and to see what it is that might spark your taste buds. So I'm just curious, what is your favorite dessert? Just shout it out.
Chocolate.
Oh, brownies.
Ice
Tir-
cream.
Tiramisu.
Banana pudding.
You're making me hungry. You're killing me here. Yep.
I got too many to choose from. It's hard.
Cheesecake.
Cheesecake. Oh,
Cheesecake. Yep, I'll go for that.
the cheesecake.
Peach cobbler.
Oh. We're covering it all. I can see that I'm going to have to do more than one healthy dessert class and do some remakes, some lighter side of cheesecake. Well, we are going to talk about a lighter side of cheesecake today. So let me ask you this. What does make a dessert unhealthy? Now, Natalie answered that question. And so I'm kind of curious whether anybody else has something to chime in about that. Or did she cover it all?
I know those are the ingredients, but to me, it's anything that can cause your arteries to clog up or you become diabetic. So
Yes.
I go on to the next stage.
Exactly. It's that sugar that can raise our insulin levels and take us into diabetes. Inflammation is the root of a lot of disease, including heart disease. So that can cause clogging of the arteries. So yeah, it's all of that. And I think
size of dessert. You forgot the size of the dessert.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep, the size of the dessert. Too many calories. These are the things that I was thinking of, and you just added. I think you hit everything now. So too many calories. You know, we have just been taught to supersize everything. And I think about that who was it? Was it Mary Lou that you said your favorite was ice cream? Were you the one that said that was your favorite dessert? So I just think about that, and I think about the typical serving size for ice cream. Does anybody know what that is?
A half a cup.
It's exactly a half a cup. Now, I want to know, when was the last time you went to an ice cream shop and got a half of a cup of ice cream?
Never.
You never get that.
Never.
Unless you get a children's menu.
Even those are
Oh,
so small. You know, I don't know. So here we are. You know, we have been so trained to think about big portion sizes. So today when we're talking, we're going to look at some desserts where you can get a good taste of dessert, but we're looking at modest portion sizes too. So that was a very good point. And we've covered all the rest of those things. Too much sugar is what we talked about with type 2 diabetes, but also the underlying inflammation that can cause and cause problems throughout our body. Too much fat can make us, fat is not the enemy that we thought it once thought it was, but too much fat is negative because it can produce too much cholesterol. There's a lot of confusion about cholesterol in our diet, that dietary cholesterol actually raises our cholesterol. That's not really true, but what the building blocks that we bring into our body can create more cholesterol. And that can be too much saturated fat. It can often actually be too much sugar, which translates or or ends up building some triglycerides, which are a type of fat which can then become cholesterol. So it's a little bit confusing, but too much fat can be a little bit of a problem. And I was listening to Dr. Mark Hyman, who is a functional medicine doctor out of Cleveland. And he says the worst kind of thing, and Mary Lou, you're not going to like this, and actually any of us that like dessert don't like this, said that the worst thing that we can eat is sweet fat. Think about it. Sweet fat, that's dessert, isn't it? It's ice cream, it's baked goods. So it's that combination. And then the other thing we do is eat too much refined white flour. So between just these two things, flour and sugar, we are getting no nutrition in either of these things, but we are getting loads of calories and loads of hits to the system that are not the best for us. So that's where we are. But there's good news. So we'll go from there. And if I could ask you just, I feel like I hear a little bit of background. So if you're not on mute, would you go ahead and put yourself on mute just for the time being? In my other classes, I go into a little more about this, and I provide a link in my Healthy Meals class on the dietary guideline overview that the dietary guidelines that the government puts out every 5 years. They just put a new one out. And essentially, this is just a little snapshot of a little piece of this. If you wanted to go and find the dietary guidelines, you could look at the lengthy document. But what we want to know today is that, generally speaking, women should be on roughly a 1,600 calorie diet. Depends on our activity level, our hormones, what the scale says. And men, roughly 2,000 calorie. Again, it depends on each individual. No one size fits all. But when we look at the macronutrients, fat, protein, carbohydrate, the two that I want to pull out about desserts are fat and carbohydrates. You can see that 20 to 35% of our daily calories should be in fat, and 45 to 65% of our daily calories should be in carbohydrates. However, these carbohydrates are not all created equal. The carbohydrates we want to be eating are those that are whole grain and full of fiber. They're called complex carbohydrates. And they break down they break down more slowly in our digestive system. That way, they do not trigger a quick insulin or a sugar spike or an insulin response. That's why they are good for our body in moderating blood sugar. So vegetables are complex carbohydrates. Fruits are complex carbohydrates. Whole grains are complex carbohydrates. Refined white flour, all-purpose flour, is a simple carbohydrate with no nutritional value, and it is very much reacted to by our body like sugar. It's that simple. It breaks almost immediately into sugar. And by way of comparison here, just want to throw this out at you. We should be having, as women, less than 6 teaspoons of added sugar per day. That's the stuff that is maybe inherent in a product that you buy that's processed. If you read the label on the back and you're counting it up, that's added sugar. They'll have a little part that says added sugar. And then anything that you would, of course, add into the making of a dessert or put into your tea or coffee is an added sugar. So less than 6 for women, less than 9 for men. And how many teaspoons do you think are in a 20-ounce bottle of Coke? Somebody's probably heard this before. Yeah. Am I seeing 4, Natalie? 4?
26.
4? Linda? Anybody else?
26.
26. Who said that? Oh, Martha, you said that. Okay, well, 4 is really low and 26 a little high, but we're at 16.
Oh.
So it's 3 times as much as what we should be having. So I can say with confidence that if you eliminate the soda from your diet, you're going to be doing yourself a huge favor and maybe making room for some really tasty, nice desserts along the way without guilt. So let me just stop right there and see if there are any questions in the chat or anything that you would like to comment on about what you see here.
The Coke has 16 what? Calories? 16
Oh, 16 teaspoons are in
teaspoons.
that
Okay, okay.
and we should be having less than 6. So it's like 3 times more. Yeah.
So, talking about diabetes, is it too much sugar? Is that how you get it?
Type 1 diabetes is a different thing. Type 1 is gestational or not gestational, but it's genetic. It's a different type of diabetes. Type 2 is generally a later adult onset diabetes that is often brought about by our diet. So
That would be
type 1
sugar? Is that
Yeah.
what affects it?
Yes, mostly sugar and simple carbohydrates, high carbohydrate diets that are simple carbohydrates. Simple would be that refined white flour, sugar. Baked goods have a lot of refined white flour. In contrast, if you're eating complex carbohydrates like whole grains or beans, those things have what are called, beans have something called resistant starch, which is resistant to being broken down, which means it's very slow to be digested, which means that our pancreas doesn't say, oh, I have to shoot out all this insulin to take care of this, because that's what happens with sugar.
Okay.
Okay.
Deb, this is Gina. I'm really curious about the sodium content because some people might think healthy desserts can be like chips and things like that. And
Oh.
sometimes cookies have a high content of sodium too.
Yeah, that's a good point. So sodium, and I don't normally think about that. You're right. In snacks, in salty snacks, we certainly do have a problem with a high level of sodium. To a lesser degree, maybe in sweet desserts like we're talking about today. But your point is a good one. And what we should be staying underneath in our daily sodium intake is 2,300 grams, which is about a teaspoon.
Okay.
So
Thank
they
you.
say we should be getting more, way less than 2,300, but certainly not more, just a teaspoon. And a teaspoon of salt, if you start to measure your salt out, just measure a teaspoon of salt and use it throughout your day. You can, that's a lot of salt, but not a lot if you're getting a lot of it in your processed foods. That's why it's so important to use whole foods, because then you're not having sodium that's already planted in your food, and you can use a little discretionary salt in salting your food. So some strategies, what can you do? And we're going to start over here with the refined flour, which is what your all-purpose flour is. It's called refined all-purpose flour. When you look at a product in the store like your bread, if you pick up a loaf of white bread and look on the back, the very first thing that you're going to see is perhaps bleached or unbleached refined flour or all-purpose flour or something like that. If that's the very first ingredient on the list of products, of ingredients, then you should probably move on, find a whole grain version. Same thing with your bags of flour. You want to think about how you can incorporate some whole grain flours into your baked goods. You don't have to eliminate all-purpose flour. The idea is to reduce it and replace it when you can. Some things that you really love, well, do you have to entirely give them up? No, but you can maybe improve upon them. So lots of recipes, and it is by the recipe, will really be okay and tolerate half of the all-purpose flour to be replaced by a whole grain flour. So that's one way in which you could increase the nutritional value and decrease the amount of simple carbohydrate in your dessert. Yes, Carter.
Did you say you can mix them?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Thanks.
Yep. And again, you can look for, a lot of times now, so I notice this, and if I think of it, I'll try to point it out in recipes, maybe you'll see it, but on these websites, lots of times people will have these questions. Well, can I substitute this for that? And they'll say whether that would be an appropriate thing if they've tried it, if the person who's written the recipe has tried it. So you can look for that. And again, it depends on the recipe. If you're making an angel food cake, it's not going to fly with whole grain flour. It just isn't. So there we go. And then in this case, we can replace flour sometimes entirely, believe it or not, by using black beans or avocados in brownies. And so somebody said that brownies were their favorite thing, and somebody else said chocolate. So we're going to be covering that in a recipe. And I see.
Deb, have you tried it? I mean, I'm like aghast at that.
Yes,
I'm
I have. I have tried it. In fact, I made the black bean brownies. I haven't made them recently, but I have made those in the past. And the avocado brownies are the ones that I've made most recently. And they are delicious. And I have people asking me for the recipe. So I'm going to make sure you get that recipe and you'll be surprised. I want you to come back and tell me what you think. But it is amazing. And so not only are we getting rid of a bad thing here, but we're adding a really good thing. What's good about avocados? What do you know about the nutrition of avocados?
Good fat.
Yeah,
Good
fat.
It's a
I have
fruit.
used avocados to make a chocolate pudding, and it was very good.
Very good. So you made the chocolate pudding. I've seen chocolate mousse. Look at Beta. Am I saying your name correctly? Is it Beta?
No. Beata.
Beata. Oh, I'm
Thank
sorry.
you, Deb. I gotta do this to see if this works.
She's just amazed. Well, this is fun. So yeah, they're the good fats, omega-3 fatty acids, which are a little harder for us. We have to be intentional about getting those in our diet through avocado oil, avocados, olive oil, nuts, that kind of thing. So this is really good for that. Half of an avocado also has 5 grams of fiber. So that's really good. We're getting more fiber in our dessert. Who knew? And by the way, 25 grams of fiber is what you should be shooting for each day. That's not always easy to get unless you're intentional about your whole grains and things like beans and avocado. So there's your strategy for flour. And now we've got a strategy for fat as well. And by the way, some of these strategies you will use maybe all of them in a recipe. Some you'll only use 1 or 2. So fat, we want to start with maybe thinking about using lower fat versions. Let me just go on the record to say here, I do not espouse no fat, because I think that the ingredients that are replacing the fat are worse than the fat. And fat is not the enemy that we learned it to be, but a low fat version is reasonable. Low fat Greek yogurt, low fat sour cream, low fat like a Neuchâtel cream cheese. Those are all really good alternatives that save you a few fat grams. And then using these healthy fats, which I was talking about earlier, avocado oil, olive oil, canola oil. I would also add coconut oil to that. Coconut oil I enjoy. It comes in refined and unrefined. If you use an unrefined coconut oil, it will have more coconut flavor. I keep a jar of each because sometimes when I make something, I don't want the coconut flavor, and sometimes I do. So in these brownies, I use coconut oil that is unrefined because I like a chocolate brownie with a hint of coconut. Tastes really good. So there's the healthy fats. Avoid the fats that, those bottles of big jugs of oil, vegetable oil. Avoid that. It's got all kind of junk oil in it. You don't need it. It's not the good stuff. This is the omega-3 fatty acids. And then you can also replace your fats with pureed fruits. So has anybody used applesauce in a muffin mix or a cake mix? Yeah. So tell me about your experience with that. Martha, tell me what you made and how that worked out.
It's been a while, but it probably was muffins.
Muffins?
Mhm.
Okay.
And
Muffins.
Same here. It's been a while, but they were fine.
Yeah.
Tell, right? You couldn't really tell.
And I used them also in muffins, and you can't tell the difference at all.
No, and it's really good in those, like a zucchini bread or something like a heavy, what am I trying to, like those sweet bread.
I made bread pudding and I
Oh,
used
pudding.
applesauce and real fruit because I was not eating sugar during Lent.
Okay, yeah,
Right.
that's a good idea. Yeah, so lots of good ways to replace. And we've only ever really heard a whole lot about maybe more on applesauce, but we can use pureed prunes. Now, they're dark, so you would want to make them with something that might have chocolate in the batter, something that's a dark batter. And then peaches, and again, prunes, well, we know prunes, right? What do? And they have fiber. And so then we could use peaches. We could use pumpkin. So pumpkin bread, pumpkin puree can replace fat. Sometimes it's a 1-for-1 replacement. Sometimes it is 1/2 replaces the whole fat. So it depends on the recipe. You can also use avocado as a fat replacement. Beata, there we go. Again, that avocado is a miracle food. And mashed banana. And banana, by the way, has a lot of potassium. So does avocado.
Do you have to, can you only buy avocados whole? You don't get canned avocados to make it easy. You have to.
No, buy them whole. And then what I do is I leave them on the counter until they're like a little bit soft that I can tell that they're getting ripe. And then if I'm not ready to use them, I will put them in the refrigerator, but I've also frozen them. I was experimenting. Somebody in one of these classes said after they cut their avocado, they put it in the freezer. Was that you, Nelda? Can you unmute yourself a second?
Yes, that was me.
And did you say that you did it after you cut the avocado and you had extra, or do you put the whole avocado in?
You can put the whole thing in or you can cut it up. Yeah, but you can leave the peeling on. Yeah.
Yes. And so I listened to Nelda. I did the very same thing. And I was really pleasantly surprised that I thawed that avocado. It was as green as could be and it worked beautifully. So there you go. And thanks, Nelda, for that tip. So then we're down to our last ingredient here, sugar. Oh, this is the big topic, right? And what I always start off with, maybe I already said this in this class, or was it the last class? It's hard to say. When I talk about sugar, I talk about it to everybody. So what I say about sugar is try this if you're trying to reduce sugar in your diet. As hard as it is, take 2 weeks and eat no sugar, nothing sweet. And then come back after 2 weeks and just take a modest taste of something. And then recall that you're going to be wanting to reduce your sugar intake. Because what I have found with that, and I can attest to it, that is that when you go without like that, your taste buds adjust. And you can come back in and you don't have to totally eliminate it if you like the taste of something sweet, but you can see that your body is and your taste buds are willing to accept a lot less sweet. So that you can come back and actually use 1/3 to 1/2 less sugar in your recipe. Won't change the quality of your recipe other than to make it less sweet. So I just give you that challenge to experiment and see what you can do with that. But again, no nutritional value in the sugar, just extra calories. So it's not a bad thing to want to reduce. And you can use natural sugars. So what are some of the natural sugars that people always ask about? Want to know if they're healthy?
Splenda.
Splenda. So Splenda is a sucralose. It's kind of a sugar alternative.
Yeah.
Honey? Coconut sugar.
Coconut sugar. I heard somebody say honey.
Hmm.
What are some other natural sugars that we might hear of?
Your fruits have a lot of natural sugar in them, not necessarily for baking, of course, but
You're right. And you can buy fructose, and that's what's in fruit. So fructose. High fructose corn syrup is not really that's one of those.
No.
But we also
maple syrup.
Maple syrup. And what's another one that kind of reminds you of maple syrup? Molasses, maybe blackstrap molasses, regular molasses. Those are all natural sugars that we feel might be healthier for us. And in fact, they do have a slight amount of nutritional value, much more, well, more so than white sugar, but they are really sugar. And so they still hit your body and your system like a sugar, and they still do lead to a sugar reaction in your body and an insulin response. Carter, do you have a question?
What about honey?
Same thing. It's a good thing, and you can use it in moderation. Just be aware that it is still a sugar, and it goes into your body as a sugar. There are a lot of great properties of honey, and especially if you eat raw honey from your area, it's been known to help with allergies and things. So it's a healthy thing. But if you're getting the kind that you can pour, it's probably been pasteurized and all the good stuff's been cooked out of it anyway. So that's why honey in the raw is important. So then there's this idea of using a sugar alcohol. How many of you have heard of sugar alcohols? Anybody? Raise your hand. Martha, what's any experience with those? Just heard of them. Just heard of them. Yep. So they're not really chemicals, even though their names sound like chemicals. They are a natural substance, and they are, however, recognized by our body differently. Our body doesn't recognize these sugar alcohols as sugars per se, and in fact, it doesn't really digest them. Instead, what happens is these move through our system, just kind of slide on through. Occasionally, you will find some people have some digestive reactions to this, much like you would have with beans or other things that are not fully absorbed by our body or broken down. So it would be important that if you experiment with these, that you do it slowly. Yeah, Martha.
Xylitol is a sugar-free gum component.
Yes. Yep, xylitol is the sugar-free gum, and it does also come in a sugar powder or a sugar, like a granulated sugar kind of thing. It tastes very cool to the tongue, tastes cold to the tongue. So I added, there's several of these, and I put erythritol in the front of the list here and xylitol second, because in my mind, these two are the best. Erythritol seems to have what I would say is the purest kind of closest to sugar taste. And it also seems to, by reports, have the least amount of any kind of gastro response. And I don't want to heighten that response, because it's not, I don't want to scare you off of trying it, because I think it's worth the try. Just be aware. Do you remember that product Olean that came out many years ago that chips were fried in? Then everybody thought they could eat like a whole bag of chips and not get fat. So they ate chips and then they had some issues. Well, you know, if you eat anything, a whole lot of anything like that, just like if you eat a whole lot of beans, right? So same, I put that on the same level. So these sugar alcohols are oftentimes blended. You can buy them pure, but they're often blended with a product or an ingredient called stevia. Who uses or has heard of stevia?
My husband likes that with his iced tea.
Yes. And do you use the kind, do you buy it in the packets?
I have a large bag that I use for that, but I have several different things, and they sometimes have the erythritol in them with the stevia. We have some squirty little drops you can put in a single glass, but you can look on Target or Amazon and find all kinds of those. But my favorite is the next one, the monk fruit.
The monk fruit. Okay.
That's my favorite.
Good. You can talk about that too. Let me talk one bit about this stevia yet, and then we'll move on. So the stevia you buy in packets is granulated and white. And so it's been processed a little bit. It is often found with these products that Patty was talking about, mixed with one of these sugar alcohols. And I'll show you some products in a minute. And stevia also can be something you grow in your garden. So I got all these baby stevia one year, and I grew it. Did you grow it?
Yeah, I didn't use it much, but I grew it.
I grew it. I stripped all those little leaves off, dried them in the oven, and powdered them into a container with my, I think I used my coffee grinder maybe. And it just, all those leaves came down to one little jar of stevia, but it is so powerfully sweet, so many 100 times sweeter than sugar, that you only need a little. The problem with using that is it's green. And so it doesn't necessarily mix well. It doesn't dissolve like a processed sugar. So you still can use it in your tea or with anything else that you don't mind having a little residual or even a green cast too. So tell us about monk fruit, Patty.
Well, but first, the stevia, I look for the one that's called stevia in the raw. It's in a big green bag at the grocery store. But the monk fruit, I had heard about it years ago, and I'd never got around to trying it until the last couple of years. And I cannot tell the difference. There's no aftertaste, which is what I don't like about the artificial sugars. But I can't say enough good stuff about monk fruit.
Good. So
I
good
second that. It's
All right.
wonderful.
That's great to hear. So I use some of those monk fruits as well. I'm going to show you the brands here in a moment, but I wanted to go back to something Patty said that I think is important. The artificial sweeteners, as you see, don't even make the list here. I don't have Splenda on here. I don't have Sweet and Low on here. I do not have NutraSweet on here. I just think, you know, if you're out and you're caught and you need a little something for your iced tea, a little packet of that every now and then isn't going to be terrible, except the blue packet, not the blue packet. But I don't put them on there for baking or anything like that. I'm so glad that we have so many other options now. And here are some of the products. I don't have listed what the sugar in the raw, but the Swerve is one of the first ones that I used. And this is erythritol, the sugar alcohol, and something called oligosaccharides. This is what is known as a prebiotic fiber. It's actually a natural substance. In fact, it's the same thing that's in beans that causes some of that stuff. So oligosaccharides, they're sugar, they taste like sugars, but they are not chemically recognized by our bodies as a sugar, so they do not get digested. So that's a nice one. It comes in granular and powdered. And then there's this monk fruit sweetener that, Patty, is this the brand you use, Lakanto?
No, it's a red bag.
Okay.
I can get
Deb,
that.
this is Gina. This is the brand I use, and I order it directly from the company. In fact, I'm getting an order in tomorrow, and it's a lot less expensive than buying it at Whole Foods. I'm getting like a 3-pound bag tomorrow for about $15, $18.
Can you show us that? Are you able to show us?
That is what I use.
Gina?
What is it's the same picture that you have.
Oh, it is this Lacanta. Okay.
Right, yes, but ordering it directly from the company is a lot less expensive.
Wow, great tip. Thank you for that. So
Then buying it from Whole Foods. Like I said, I'm getting an order tomorrow, and you can get it in 3-pound bags for a lot less than and it's a larger quantity than if you would buy it at a store.
Great to know. Okay, does everybody have the spelling of that? Lakanto. It is the brand that I see out the most. I haven't seen a whole lot of other brands for it. I guess it's just the most.
There are 2 different kinds. Is there a recommended?
Right.
Which one?
It depends on what you're looking for. So one's the golden, just depends on if you want something that's a little closer to a brown sugar. And then there's the classic, which would be your granulated table sugar.
And they're also making an organic one now too.
That's great. Good to know. And that's where Better Than Sugar has gone as well. I like this one too. And I really just accidentally moved into this because I was strolling through the grocery outlet, which I love to do because I find all these cool products and they're less expensive. And I saw these and they were $3.99. They have an organic version. And they have both a white and a powdered sugar version. And it's the erythritol stevia blend. I can use that 1-for-1 in replacement of regular sugar and don't really know the difference. In fact, I used it over the Easter holiday for my whole family, and everybody loved the desserts. I didn't tell them anything differently. Are there any others that you would, well, let me take a look. I guess I need to move on because I definitely want to get to the desserts. But as we go along, if you have other things, put them in the chat to share. Because I want Beata to see this avocado flourless brownie recipe. So here we go. And the benefit of this is these are so easy to make. So if you have an avocado that's ripe and ready to go, you can get to it.
Yeah.
And you know what? I am going to do something here. I just noticed this the other day and I totally, completely forgot to change it out. I made this recipe and then I decided I made another one that I liked better. So I'm going to go through this with you and it's going to be the concept, but then I'm going to replace this in the notes with another recipe that I like better. Okay? And you are using same ingredients. You're using the avocado and some, I use coconut oil here. Some unsalted nut butter replaces the other fat, gives us more, instead of putting all like coconut oil or ghee, which is a clarified butter, or using another kind of saturated fat, we're substituting part of that out with some omega-3 fatty acids in the form of a nut butter fat. So that's the method behind that madness. And it can be any kind of nut butter, even sunflower seed butter. And then we can use the Lakanto, the monk fruit here, or any of those sugar substitutes that we talked about. And then some cacao. I think in the one that I am sending you, you're going to be using a little more cacao. If the one I'm sending you is really, really fudgy and flourless, and a little vanilla extract. So when all you do is take all of these ingredients, put them in your food processor and give it a few whirls. You do not want to blend and blend and blend this. You just want to get it to the point where the avocado is blended and you don't have chunks of avocado in there. And then take an 8x8 inch dish and line it with parchment paper and put your batter in there and bake this for 25 minutes at 350 and give it about 15 minutes. Pull the parchment paper up and put the whole thing on a cooling rack. Let it cool completely, and then you can cut it into smaller squares. And this is one of those where you want to, the calorie is 152 for a small square. It's not low calorie. It is high nutritional value. So this is one of those desserts that you want to have just one up. Make yourself a really nice cup of coffee or tea. Cut yourself this little square and enjoy it. You might do it after you have your sugar fast. And you might
What do you consider a little square in your 8x8 pan? Are we talking?
Well, your 8x8 pan should yield, let's see, what does it say? The serving is like, go back to this.
8 servings.
8.
Don't 8 though.
So my 8 pan would probably give me 9 because I'd probably chop it into 9 blocks.
Have you ever not used the gelatin?
Yeah, I don't use the gelatin.
What about still chewy?
Yeah, I like them that way. So you could try it both ways. I'd probably try it again at some point, maybe give it a go, but I liked it just the way it was. I thought, well, I'll make it just that one way. So
I wondered about the cacao powder. Can you just use the Hershey's cocoa?
Oh, yeah. That's what I use. Yeah.
Okay, because that's a lot cheaper.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's no reason to, yeah. Yep. So they got a great review, but like I said, like that other one better. And I'm glad I noticed that because I don't know. I was pretty sure, I made those, but then I made them again and I just didn't like them as well. And I made this other recipe and sent them over to a friend who's on a keto diet. And she eats very little of this kind of stuff and it's a splurge and it was her birthday. And so I made her those brownies and she just loved them. And then she asked me for the recipe. So I thought that was pretty good confirmation that it was a good recipe. So who likes pecan pie or pecan pie? How do you say it?
Pecan here.
Hey, pecan. Yeah, I guess most people say pecan. Here in Pennsylvania, I don't know. Dutch German pecans is what we call them. So,
yeah, South Carolina's pecan.
Is it? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I like going down that way and seeing all the pecan stands. So this one is not without its gooiness and it's sugar. But I do want to just call this to your attention. A piece of regular pecan pie has 588 calories, and it has 83 carbs and 42 grams of sugar. So I don't know if you have a pen or something, you just want to jot that down, 7.5 grams of saturated fat. Because when it's all said and done, I will tell you what this one has. And you'll see that it has been substantially improved nutritionally. And there are a lot of ways that you can make the crust for this pie. I'm going to send to you an oatmeal crust that is a press in the pan oatmeal crust that I think just amps up the nutrition a little bit more and is a lower calorie. But you can use what she does here. And I just want to show this to you if you don't happen to like the oatmeal. So the ingredients are as such: pecans, a little bit of, 2 tablespoons of blackstrap molasses, some pure maple syrup. So we are using natural sugars here. We are not using, what's the usual sugar in a pecan pie or pecan pie?
Carob,
Carob syrup.
corn syrup, yeah.
Syrup, yeah. So we're at least improving that way. And then this is a vegan considered a vegan recipe. Can you guess why that is? By looking at that ingredient list, can you tell why? What is another ingredient that's in a pecan pie that is not on this list?
Eggs, maybe?
Eggs. So eggs are no go for a vegan. So we're going to make flax meal eggs. Now, you don't have to make flax meal eggs. You can use your regular eggs. They are a great protein source. I think they're healthy as all get out. So you can just use your usual 2 eggs. Or if you want to try this, you can whisk a 1/4 cup of flax meal into 1/3 cup of water and just see what happens. It actually gets thick and it acts like an egg. So if you go this way, we'll just go this route because it's the nature of the recipe, but know that you can substitute it out. What you're going to do, and notice these are optional toppings. So if I'm looking to really kind of save on a calorie count on a recipe, I sort of tend to ignore the optional items because it's overkill for me. I just love the taste of what's in the pie. So you can use a store-bought crust. Every time you do that, you're looking at ingredients you probably don't want to have for the most part, unless you find a really wholesome, organic, good one. And alternatively, you can make this one that she has listed here, and it's a press in the pan pie dough, which can be, made with a combination of whole wheat or white flour, or you can use either or combine them, is what I meant to say there. So you can completely substitute with a whole wheat here, or a whole grain crust, which really makes the nutrition of this a whole lot better. Because again, you are kind of counterbalancing some of that sweetness, that sugar, because you've got a complex carbohydrate in there that is helping to slow the digestion a little bit. It's not adding fuel to the fire anyway. So you can pre-bake that shell a little bit at 400 degrees. And then you're just whisking all the other ingredients together, and you're putting that in the fridge for about 30 minutes until that flax mixture can set up and make your filling a little thicker. And then you will pour it into the crust. Now you're going to bake this at 350 for about 35 minutes. And when you're finished baking it, just leave the oven door closed for another 10 until it's really set. Then it should be done.
Well, I'm wondering, could you possibly substitute the molasses and the maple syrup with monk fruit? In other words, just don't use those sugars. I'm wondering.
Well, those sugars, they're a liquid. Right. And the monk fruit is not really a liquid kind of thing. I don't think I've seen any products like that. Has anybody seen a liquid monk fruit sweetener like that would resemble? That's a great question. To my knowledge, there's nothing like that at this point. So I wouldn't substitute a granulated for a liquid.
I see. Okay.
Okay. So here we go with the calories. Remember, this is without the pie dough. So I'm going to scroll down.
Oh,
So with the pie dough that she described above, that's not my oatmeal pie dough, which would lower it a little bit more. You've got 351 calories compared to 588. You have 42 grams of fiber, or I'm sorry, carbohydrates compared to 83. You have 18.9 sugars compared to 42 sugars.
but
So-
for an adult woman, that compares to the 5 sugars we're supposed to have, or that's regular sugars and it's not added sugar.
Yeah, these are added sugars.
These are, so.
So you would have, this is where, you're still splurging on dessert a little bit. Let me think about that. Are these all added sugars? There may be some small amount of sugar in the nuts or but yeah, this is pretty much added sugar.
Yikes.
Yeah, I know. But this is where you're looking at on average, and do you eat this all the time? So if you want a piece of pie every now and then, this is one that would be a little bit of a splurge. It's still, oh, you know what? Hold on a second. I take that back entirely. Scratch what we just said, because we're not talking the equal things there. So remember, it was 6 teaspoons. It was less than 6 teaspoons a day, not less than 18.9, not less than 16 grams. Let me go back to something here, because I can't remember, keep this in my head. So there are 4 calories per gram in a gram of
25 grams of
25 grams of sugar. 16.
Thank you.
Yes. Thank you for saying that. I'm glad you did, because that's an important question. Okay, so there you go on the pecan pie. Not bad. Not really bad at all. And I thought it was very tasty. Does it taste exactly as decadent as your typical pecan pie? No. But when I think about how much better it is for me, I'm okay with that. And so I want to see whether you feel the same. If you try this recipe, let me know what you think.
And yours did not include that big scoop of
No, I did put the ice cream on. I know. I think she did that just to make it look, because it looked maybe a little naked. I know they do everything for the visual, right? The picture. It's all about the photo op. So who liked the cheesecake? Who was that? The cheesecake. I know. Okay. And am I saying that right? I feel like, am I saying your name correctly? Okay. So I'm getting late in the day here, but I'm going to pop into this one and show you, because this is probably my most favorite. I want to tell you that this was the one I made at home, and I just used basic whipped cream out of the can, which was fine. It's very, the ingredients aren't bad there. Notice there's some crumb topping on that, and I'll get back to that. But I love this for its versatility. I took it and served it for company. I took it on the road with me, served it to friends at dinner, and they loved it. It was very light and refreshing after a meal. So not only did it have this great cheesecake taste, but it didn't have that weigh me down cheesecake thing that just sits in your stomach after you eat it. And it is super easy to make, and all the ingredients are very nutritious. So we're using, well, maybe the graham crackers, not so much, but the graham crackers, 4 sheets of them that we're balancing out a little bit with some chopped pecans and a little bit of cinnamon. So we get some nice nutrition with the pecans. And we're putting those all in a food processor and just grinding them into crumbs for a crust. And then the filling is this reduced fat cream cheese, some non-fat, or you can just use low fat. You can use regular Greek yogurt. I'm not big on the non-fat thing. Greek yogurt, but don't use regular yogurt. Use Greek, because the regular yogurt would be too liquidy.
Too thin, yeah.
Now, if you do have regular yogurt and you want to use that, not a flavored yogurt, if you have a regular yogurt and you want to use it, you can just put it in a strainer with some cheesecloth and let the liquid drain out. And that is essentially what Greek yogurt is. And then it's a cup of pumpkin puree. And I want you to think about what else you could put into these things. You could use a strawberry puree, make this a strawberry thing, or a lemon thing. and then a little vanilla. You could use pumpkin pie spice if you're using the pumpkin puree, a little bit of vanilla, and 6 tablespoons of maple syrup. But this is across 8 servings, okay? And so all you're doing is putting some of those, reserve some of the crumbs for the topping, put crumbs across the glasses in the bottom, add your filling, and when you're ready to serve, put your whipped cream on top and sprinkle with the crumbs. That's it. But do let the filling set up a while in the refrigerator before you put it into your glasses. So I think that's all we have time for today, but you will get the recipes for these other 2. The flourless chocolate chip chickpea blondies use chickpeas as the flour exchange, kind of like we use for the black beans, but we're having a lighter color batter, and it cooks up and mixes up pretty much like the brownies that we talked about. And then the yogurt cake does use a little bit of, it does use refined white flour, but you can use your a reduced sweetener and use some other ingredients in this one to make it lighter as well. It uses a very judicious amount of type of jelly, like perhaps an apricot jelly that you heat up on the stove until it's just starting to get runny. You don't want it to get hot, and then you use it to glaze the top. So you get this nice fruit flavor and just a tiny bit of sugar. So there's some good strategies in that for you too. So that kind of brings us to the conclusion of the class today. And sorry we didn't get completely through all the recipes, but we had a lot of great discussion about the ingredients and about the sugar substitutes. My next class is coming up. I have one tonight. I'm really looking for more people to come. We're going to celebrate Earth Day and talk about a great picnic and how to make a really nice day out of Earth Day, being out in nature, which is something after this pandemic, or in this pandemic, we could all use a little more of. And I do a class on heart healthy cooking that's coming up next week. And I have some other things going on too. And next week, just to get ready, we're going to be having a Kentucky Derby party. Well, we're going to get ready, get you psyched about having a little Kentucky Derby gathering at your house. So look for that on the schedule, wear your hat, and join me for Kentucky Derby.
When's your class on Earth Day?
Well, I have one this evening at 5:30, and then there's someone
5:30.
scheduled for next week too. And so you'll get the class notes after this, and you'll have some suggestions for other classes and a chance to give us some feedback. So that's really helpful to us. Whoops. And I want you to be aware that when you sign up for a class, you can click on this little button and really easily invite people to come to class with you. So when you're thinking about something like, oh, Earth Day, that sounds like fun. Maybe I even have some friends that might like to do a picnic with me on Earth Day. Maybe they'll all come to class, that kind of thing. You can just think of a way to include some people and have a little reunion online.
Is this for anybody or just senior citizens?
This is for
Anybody.
That's a good question. It's 50 and above, but I don't think anybody's going to get really turned away. Okay.
And one more, prunes. Do you do canned prunes or dried prunes and somehow fix them so you can use them?
Well, you can take the dried prunes and then you'd need to soak them.
Soak them. Okay, thank you.
Put them in water. Yeah. You want them to be pretty good and soft. And then you can puree them in your food processor. So that's the name of that. And you stop my share here and just, just give you a chance to say anything else for the good of the cause or ask me any further questions.
That's it.
Yes, what was the avocado trick? Freezing.
Oh, is Nelda? Want to speak to that?
What does she want?
Freezing the avocado?
You just freeze it. I mean, you just put it in a bag. I put it in a freezer, freezer type bag, a Ziploc bag, and I just leave them in there till I'm ready to use them.
And then you thaw them in your refrigerator or on the counter.
And then I just take them out of the freezer and let them unfreeze a little bit. But you can start cutting them when they're frozen and just let them, defreeze that way a little quicker.
You don't peel them
Okay.
first? You don't peel them first?
Yes, peel them. Well, you can do
Oh.
it either way.
Okay.
Yeah.
You can peel them, you peel, not when you put them in the freezer. Well, you could put them in the freezer that way, but you can put them in whole,
Yeah.
Right.
which is what I did. And now that I didn't even put mine in a bag. I just threw them in the freezer, which I guess if you're leaving them in for a very long period of time, maybe you want to put them, make sure you put them in a bag, but
I do bananas like that too.
Sure.
yeah, I do peel the bananas and put them in a bag. Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
They're hard to peel if they're still frozen.
Great class. Thank you.
Thank you.
Wonderful, wonderful.
We need to have part 2, more recipes, more sharing.
We will do more.
Yeah.
And you know what? And I'm starting to do more in the kitchen too. So I come to some of those more demonstration, I'm just working up on that a little bit. So this is a lot of fun. And I take your ideas all the time. I'm going to do something on strawberry desserts coming shortly. Because
Great.
I like to look at things that are coming in season and work with those. So stay tuned. All right, Deborah.
Thank you.
Thank
you.
you. Enjoyed it, Deb.
Thank you. Give us some
Bye-bye.
feedback. That's really helpful. Need to let everybody else know in my company that you like the classes. That's really,
Sure.
thanks so much. Take care.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Deb.
You're welcome. Hi, Carter. Thanks for coming.
Thank you for having me. I did put a note on there, maybe you can look at.
Oh, yep. I will look at that right now.
Thank you.
Uh-huh. Are you still there?
Yeah, I'll stay here.
Let me look at it here.
I didn't want to lengthen your class, but
Guiltless recipes on banana bread and oatmeal cookies. Okay. I will put that on my, actually, I run a spreadsheet to keep track of all those things, and I'll put that on my list, okay?
okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yep, you're welcome. And really, if you want to try it, guiltless recipe on banana bread, you can pick a banana bread recipe
Mhm.
that you have and just substitute half the whole grain flour, half the flour out for whole grain, and use one of those sugar substitutes instead.
Okay,
And if it calls for a lot of butter, you could use half the butter and substitute it with one of those few fruit purees. You're
Okay.
probably already using bananas.
Yeah.
So that's probably what's taking the place of some of that. But that's just a short answer until we can get to, that gets you somewhere until we can get to a class on that.
and I appreciate it.
You're welcome. See you later.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.